Something strange is happening at Old Trafford. For the first time in more than a decade, Manchester United don't look desperate. They don't look confused. And they definitely don't look like a club chasing headlines anymore. Instead, they look like a club building something. Quietly. Patiently. Almost dangerously. That should scare every Premier League fan. Because the biggest mistakes Manchester United made after Sir Alex Ferguson were never about money. They spent hundreds of millions. They signed world-famous stars. They changed managers. Changed systems. Changed philosophies. Again, and again, and again. Yet nothing truly changed. Every summer promised a new beginning. Every season ended with the same question. What went wrong this time? But this summer, something feels completely different. Not because Manchester United signed the biggest superstar. Not because they broke another transfer record. And not because social media says they're back. It's because, for the first time in years, every single transfer looks connected. Every player seems to solve another player's problem. Every signing feels like another piece of the same puzzle. No random decisions. No panic buying. No famous names just for shirt sales. This isn't a collection of footballers. It's the beginning of an identity. And once you notice that, you start seeing something even more interesting. Michael Carrick isn't trying to rebuild Manchester United. He's trying to redesign them. A completely different idea. A completely different football team. One built around movement, control, intensity, and players who actually fit together. Which brings us to the footballer almost nobody is talking about. Because while everyone debates the strikers, the wingers, and the headlines, one signing might quietly become the player that changes absolutely everything. Not because he's the flashiest. Not because he'll score the most goals. But because without him, this entire project simply doesn't work. And once you understand why Manchester United wanted him so badly, you'll understand why the rest of the Premier League might have a serious problem. For years, Manchester United searched for stars. This summer, Michael Carrick searched for balance. That difference changes everything. Because when Carrick looked at his squad, he didn't see a lack of talent. He saw broken connections. Bruno Fernandes wanted the ball higher. Kobbie Mainoo wanted freedom to carry it. The wingers needed quicker service. The striker needed earlier deliveries. And every transition felt just a second too slow. The problem wasn't quality. The problem was the player standing between all those moments. Someone had to link the first pass to the final attack. Someone had to slow the game down before speeding it up again. Someone had to make everybody else better. That player was Youri Tielemans. Not the loudest signing. Not the biggest headline. But perhaps the smartest decision Manchester United have made in years. United activated a release clause worth around £35 million. A fee that almost feels unbelievable in today's market. Especially for a midfielder entering his prime with hundreds of Premier League appearances already behind him. Other clubs admired him. Carrick wanted him. There is a difference. Carrick wasn't buying highlights. He was buying control. The kind of player managers love, because cameras rarely show the work he does. Watch him for 90 minutes, and you'll notice something strange. He always seems available. When defenders panic, he appears. When midfielders get trapped, he appears. When attackers need one more pass, he appears again. He doesn't dominate games with tricks. He dominates them by making the right decision, before everyone else even sees it. That is exactly why Aston Villa trusted him. And it's exactly why Manchester United believed he could become the heartbeat of a completely new midfield. Because the best midfielders don't always play the most spectacular football. Sometimes, they simply make everybody around them look better. And that might be Tielemans' greatest talent. The scary part is that Michael Carrick never wanted 11 great individuals. He wanted one team that thinks the same way. That's much harder to build. Because talent wins matches. Connection wins championships. Carrick understood something Manchester United had forgotten for years. Football isn't about collecting stars. It's about making stars play for each other. Every successful team has one invisible player. The player who almost never gets the headlines, but quietly controls everything around him. At Manchester City, Rodri was that player. At Liverpool, it was Thiago. For Carrick, that player is Yuri Tielemans. Not because he'll score the most goals. Not because he'll produce viral highlights every weekend. Because he'll make everyone else better. That's football's greatest superpower. Watch Kobbie Mainoo. His biggest strength has never been carrying the ball. It's receiving under pressure. Turning. Escaping. Driving forward. But imagine giving him an extra second every time he receives possession. Everything changes. That's exactly what Tielemans creates. Then look at Bruno Fernandes. For years, he's been forced to do everything himself. Drop deep. Start attacks. Create chances. Score goals. Lead the press. Carry the team. No elite playmaker should have that responsibility. Carrick knows it. That's why Tielemans matters. Because every pass he plays moves Bruno closer to goal. Closer to danger. Closer to the area where Bruno becomes almost impossible to stop. And then, there's Benjamin Sesko, a striker who constantly attacks the space behind defenders. The problem is, those runs only matter if somebody sees them early. Tielemans does. Sometimes, before the defenders even realize the run has started. That's why Carrick kept insisting on this signing. He wasn't buying another midfielder. He was buying time. An extra second for Mainoo. An extra meter for Bruno. An extra passing lane for Sesko. Sometimes, that's all elite football needs. And once those tiny advantages begin adding up, Manchester United become a completely different team. Because now, every attack starts making sense. Every great football team has a rhythm. Not speed. Not possession. Rhythm. The moment when every player already knows where the next pass is going. That's what Carrick is trying to create. And that's why Kobbie Mainoo is untouchable. Carrick doesn't see him as another young midfielder. He sees him as the future heartbeat of Manchester United. Because Mainoo plays with something that cannot be taught. Calmness. Watch him receive the ball. Most young midfielders panic. They rush. They force difficult passes. Mainoo doesn't. He waits. He scans. He turns. Then suddenly, the entire pitch opens. That's why Carrick trusts him so much. But here's the problem. Even the calmest midfielder eventually runs out of options, if nobody helps him. For the last few seasons, that was Manchester United's biggest weakness. Mainoo would escape one press, only to find himself completely alone. Bruno had already pushed forward. The striker was waiting. The winger stayed wide. The connection simply wasn't there. Now, that missing connection finally exists. Because while Mainoo escapes pressure, Tielemans immediately offers another passing angle. When Mainoo turns, Tielemans is already moving. When Bruno drifts between defenders, Tielemans has already spotted him. That's not chemistry. That's understanding. The type of understanding that usually takes years to build. Carrick believes these players can build it much faster. And once that happens, Bruno Fernandes becomes even more dangerous. People often think Bruno's greatest weapon is his passing. It isn't. It's his movement. The way he disappears, before suddenly appearing exactly where defenders don't want him. The problem was, he spent too much time helping Manchester United build attacks. Now, he doesn't have to. Now he can stay closer to the final third. Closer to the penalty area. Closer to the moments that decide football matches. That's where Bruno becomes elite. Not 70 yards from goal. 20. And then, Andre Santos completes the picture. Unlike Tielemans, he doesn't slow games down. He speeds them up. He wins the ball. Plays forward. Attacks space. Keeps the pressure alive. Different qualities. Same objective. One controls. One accelerates. One creates. Together, they finally give Manchester United something supporters haven't seen for a very long time. A midfield where every player actually makes the next player stronger. And once that starts happening, the attack becomes even more frightening. Because now, Benjamin Sesko won't be making runs alone anymore. Benjamin Sesko won't be making runs alone anymore. Football becomes terrifying when defenders stop knowing who the real danger is. That is exactly what Carrick is trying to build. For years, Manchester United's attacks were predictable. Stop Bruno, and everything slowed down. Close the striker, and the move died. Defenders always knew where the danger was coming from. Not anymore. Because this new front line asks completely different questions. Benjamin Sesko doesn't just wait inside the penalty area. He stretches defenses. Every time he runs behind, center-backs are forced to follow. And every step they take backwards creates another pocket of space. That's where Bruno appears. That's where Cunha comes alive. That's where Mbeumo becomes lethal. Suddenly, one run creates 3 different problems. And Premier League defenders hate making choices. Do you follow Sesko? Or stay with Bruno? Do you close Cunha? Or stop Mbeumo attacking the far side? Choose wrong, and somebody is completely free. That's why this attack feels so different. Every movement creates another movement. Every run opens another passing lane. Every defender who leaves his position creates space for somebody else. That isn't improvisation. That's choreography. Exactly the kind of football Michael Carrick wants. Then there's Bryan Mbeumo, one of the smartest off-ball runners in England. He doesn't wait for opportunities. He creates them. While defenders watch the ball, Mbeumo watches space. And by the time they finally notice him, he's already gone. That's what makes him so dangerous. Not unbelievable pace. Perfect timing. Now imagine those runs being found by Bruno Fernandes, or by Tielemans, or even by Menu driving through midfield. Those chances become far more frequent. Then comes Matheus Cunha, probably the hardest player in this squad to defend, because he refuses to stay still. 1 minute, he's drifting inside. The next, he's pulling defenders wide. Then suddenly, he's arriving inside the box like a second striker. Managers love players like Cunha. Defenders don't, because structure disappears the moment he starts moving. And once defenders lose their structure, Manchester United find their opportunity. That's the biggest difference between Carrick's United and the teams we've seen over the last decade. This attack isn't built around one superstar. It's built around constant movement, constant rotation, constant uncertainty. Which means, even if one player is having a quiet game, the system never stops creating danger. And when every attack can hurt you in 4 different ways, defending becomes almost impossible. But here's the frightening part. We've only talked about the attack. We haven't even looked at what happens when Manchester United lose the ball. We haven't even looked at what happens when Manchester United lose the ball. Most people think football is won when you have the ball. Michael Carrick doesn't. He believes matches are won the second you lose it. That's where this project becomes truly fascinating. Because Carrick isn't building 11 attackers. He's building 11 defenders who happen to love attacking. Watch Manchester United the moment possession disappears. Nobody points fingers. Nobody waits. Nobody jogs back. Everyone reacts. Immediately. The closest player presses. The second player blocks the passing lane. The third player protects the space behind. Within seconds, what looked like a dangerous counterattack becomes another United attack. That's exactly what modern football demands. Not defending for 90 minutes. Winning the ball back before the opponent even starts attacking. Carrick learned that lesson years ago. As a player, he watched Sir Alex Ferguson build relentless teams. Then later, he studied Pep Guardiola from the opposite side. Different football. Same obsession. Control. The faster you recover possession, the less you have to defend. That's why United's press suddenly feels organized. Not chaotic. Every player already knows where the next trigger begins. The moment a defender receives facing his own goal, United move. The moment a poor first touch appears, United move. The moment the pass becomes predictable, United attack together. Not one player. The whole team. That's what separates elite pressing from running without purpose. For years, Manchester United pressed as individuals. Now, they hunt as a unit. Watch Bruno. He doesn't press because he's angry. He presses because somebody behind him has already covered the space. Watch Menu. He doesn't dive into tackles. He waits, forcing opponents exactly where United want them. Then Andre Santos arrives. Then Tielemans closes another lane. Suddenly, The pitch feels impossibly small. That's why teams struggle to escape. Not because United run more. Because they remove options. Football becomes incredibly difficult when every passing lane disappears. Liverpool discovered it. Arsenal discovered it. Manchester City discovered it. Not because Carrick copied anyone. Because he finally gave Manchester United something they had lost years ago. Collective discipline. Every player attacks together. Every player defends together. Every player sacrifices. That's no longer individual football. That's identity. And once a team discovers its identity, confidence starts growing faster than anything else. Which is exactly why this Manchester United project suddenly feels so dangerous. Because confidence is becoming their biggest weapon. The most dangerous football teams don't become great overnight. They evolve. Quietly. Almost without anyone noticing. That's exactly what's happening at Old Trafford. A few months ago, people were laughing at Manchester United. Every transfer became a joke. Every defeat became another headline. Every season ended with the same question. How much longer will this continue? But football changes incredibly fast. Sometimes, one manager changes everything. Not because he spends more money. Because he finally gives every player a purpose. Look around this squad now. Manu knows his role. Tielemans knows his role. Bruno knows exactly where he'll receive the ball. Santos understands when to press. Sesko knows where the crosses are coming from. Mbumo knows which spaces will open. Cunha knows he isn't carrying the attack alone. That changes everything. Because confidence spreads. One successful performance becomes two. Two become five. Five become belief. And belief is football's most dangerous emotion. That's how dynasties begin. Not with trophies. With trust. Suddenly, players stop hesitating. Passes arrive quicker. Runs become sharper. Movements happen naturally. Everything starts looking effortless. But it isn't effortless. It's repetition. It's coaching. It's identity. That's the word Manchester United supporters have been waiting to hear again. Identity. For more than a decade, every new manager brought a different idea. Different football. Different signings. Different direction. Nothing lasted. Nothing connected. Now, for the first time since Sir Alex Ferguson walked away, Manchester United finally look like they're following one clear vision. Not a short-term fix. Not another expensive gamble. A genuine football project. And that's why rival fans should pay attention. Because rebuilding a giant takes time. But once that giant remembers who it is, stopping it becomes a completely different challenge. Manchester United aren't chasing the past anymore. They're building something new. Something younger. Something faster. Something far more dangerous. And perhaps, that's exactly what the Premier League has been hoping would never happen. Maybe, Manchester United won't win the Premier League this season. Football doesn't work like that. Maybe injuries arrive. Maybe one bad month changes everything. Maybe another team simply proves stronger. That's football. But that's no longer the real story. The real story is that Manchester United finally have direction again. For years, every summer felt exactly the same. New manager. New signings. New promises. New disappointment. Everything changed. Nothing lasted. But this feels different. Not because they've spent more money. Not because they've signed bigger names. Because for the first time in over a decade, every signing follows the same idea. Every player fits the system. Every player understands the identity. Every player makes the next player better. That's how great teams are built. Not through individual brilliance. Through collective understanding. That's why Michael Carrick's project is becoming so dangerous. He's not trying to recreate Sir Alex Ferguson. He's building a completely different Manchester United. One built for modern football. Fast. Aggressive. Fearless. Relentless. And perhaps, that's even more frightening. Because the Premier League already knows what happens when Manchester United finally believe again. For years, England watched one giant slowly lose itself. Now, that giant is beginning to remember who it is. Not completely. Not yet. But every week, the picture becomes a little clearer. Every match, the connections become stronger. Every victory, the belief grows louder. And once belief starts spreading through Old Trafford, history suggests only one thing usually follows. Trophies. Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But sooner than people expect. Because this isn't simply another rebuild. This is Manchester United learning how to become Manchester United again. And if Michael Carrick finishes building the team he actually wants, the Premier League won't just have another title contender. It might have its next monster.